I mean, you can't beat the price. I would suggest you check it out. It's relatively new. I just started about within the last year as IoT has taken off. In the IoT Daily, we cover a lot of these kinds of things. Certainly the things like the Alexa environment, that sort of thing. Anything that's internet connected is in our space. And we write about this. I write the Connected Thinking column every day. Chase in the front row reports for the IoT Daily every day. So we have a lot of content today. Just a couple of quick stats to sort of kick this off. 34,000 developers have built more than 30,000 bots for Facebook Messenger. Facebook Messenger obviously is a serious player here. More than 900 million use Facebook Messenger on a regular basis. 100 million people in India use the chat app Hike. 90% of them are under 30, so there's a demographic issue involved here too. And for scope, Hike just raised $175 million a short time ago. So there's a lot of money in this arena, and there's a lot of scale, and it's a global phenomenon. It's not a U.S. phenomenon, as are most of the technologies these days, especially in the land of IoT. We're dealing with the world virtually all the time. Today's agenda, basically we're going to be tackling all of the issues around bots and chats. There are quite a few. This is not really a simple thing because it's, I mean, it should be a chat up here or a bot up here doing this whole thing, but and that probably the next conference will do. There'll be just some technology up here running this, which would be pretty good. But it probably wouldn't be as good as we're going to be, but I would hope. Anyway, so today's discussion, we're going to look at artificially intelligent programming conversational commerce, and that's a panel with Antplay, Zenith Media, MediaPost Spark, Digital Surgeons, and IPG Media Labs. A lot of friends of MediaPost and a lot of leading thinkers here. Then one of my favorite presenters ever from Hacker Agency out west, Global Chief Creative Officer Hayden Swillich is going to talk about basically conversation. What does it look like, automated conversation, and the challenges of brands? How do you basically look and feel like the brand when you're automatic, and people have different expectations. Then we're going to look at Snapchat creating the 10-second story. How do you deal in this shorter attention span environments? And we get BB Clark and Myler, MediaCom, the Media Kitchen, Intellect Labs. And then we have a presentation by Gabe Weiss, Retail Innovation Lead at Sapient Nitro. Some very leading edge stuff here on aligning, basically aligning with brands. How do you align the conversation between the brand and the bot? And then we have another presentation by Christian Peterson, the Director of Product, Comcast Silicon Valley Innovation Center. Again, some leading edge stuff on marketing personalization. And then we're gonna cap this off with tools of the trade. With Glasswing Ventures, Kinetic Worldwide, Grubhub, and Block Party. So we've got a full agenda today, a lot of information. These are a lot of people who are doing things very actively in this space, so there's really a lot of information that's going to be shared. If you look at some of the things that people are saying in the marketplace, bots are the new apps. This is the CEO of Microsoft. And you've got people like the CEO of Kik, Ted Livingston. Chat is going to be the next great operating systems. Apps will become thought of as the new browsers. Bots will be the new websites. This is the beginning of a new internet. Now, if that's only half true, it's still a very big deal. The CIO of 1-800-Flowers, millennials look at the interaction with the mobile device based on the last best experience they had, so expectations grow each time they make a purchase. Knowing how consumers interacted with each individual brand in the past becomes key. It also will support custom call centers. The next generation will become conversational bots, and we're pretty much getting there right now. So this is sort of some of the viewpoint. I could do 100 of these in the marketplace. AI in the world of bots, which is going to be our opening panel in just about 60 seconds. This is from the general manager of Salesforce. There's an absolute revolution occurring in artificial intelligence. This is democratizing AI so that every company can benefit from these techniques. The promise of AI is growing as benefits from through the cloud. So that's some of the viewpoint of various people around the marketplace, around the planet. Google is getting into this in a very big way. I'm just going to play a very short clip, which some of you have seen. This was embedded in an article Joe Mandisi, editor-in-chief of MediaPost, wrote a few days ago. And this is the new LO. Can you turn up the volume?
Full of rigor mortis. I might ignore your record because it has no
I don't know if it's mic drop worthy, but the point is that everybody, all the major players are getting into this in a very, very big way. This is not going to be a small deal. It's going to be a very big deal. So to kick this off, I'd like to bring our opening panel up to the stage right now, led by Connie Garrido, partner of OnPlay. Connie's been in the advertising and media arena for 25 plus years. She's a partner at out-of-home communications agency for MDC Partners. She also serves as a strategic advisor to a select client base. She's the former CEO of PosterScope America, president and founder of Chrysalis, and non-traditional media agency for Havas Worldwide, chief creative officer for Kinetic North America, and president of MyShare North America. So please join me in welcoming Connie and her panel.
Thank you, and obviously I can't make it up on the chair. Yes, I do need a hand. Here, you hold that. Okay, so that's comic relief for you. There you go. I hate these stools.
These are really bad.
Then I go on podiums, and I hate those too because they cover me. But anyway, welcome. Really excited to be here, and since I am known to butcher names, I will very quickly go down and allow my panel to introduce themselves quickly so that we can get right into it because there's so much material to cover.
Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Goodwin. I'm the EVP, Head of Innovation and Content at Zenith Media. So my role is everything new in advertising. We've got new technologies, new platforms, new behaviors, new business models. So advertising agencies should probably change. So I lead a team of people who do new things.
Hi, I'm Andrew Klein. I lead social experience and custom product innovation for MediaVest Spark, and basically bring startups and emerging technologies to our clients and find really amazing ways to integrate them and bring them to our consumers and audiences.
Hello, everybody. My name is Natalie Monbiot, and I'm SVP, Head of Strategic Innovation at Universal McCann, or UM, sorry, I should get that right one day. My role is to drive innovation more upstream in the organization. So basically, how do we crack a client's business challenge a new and better and more interesting way based on all the tools and data and new white spaces that are available for us to take advantage of.
My name is Pete Senna. I'm the Chief Creative Officer at Digital Surgeons. I run our innovation practice, and my job is to take design, technology, and business and mash it all together and hopefully get some business outcomes out of it.
And I'm Scott Varland, VP and Head of Creative for the IPG Media Lab and for Ansible. So I lead an integrated production creative development team.
Great, thank you so much. In my preparation calls with the panel, I've learned so much, and it's just incredible. There's so much information out there. But we do have, like, I get the leading minds because 3 of them come from the IP Media Labs, right?
That's right. There's quite some strong alumni from the IPG Media Lab.
And then,
Class of 2010.
there you go.
That's one.
So let's kick it off, and hopefully we'll be able to impart a lot of knowledge. So obviously, conversational commerce, conversational marketing is the extension of, natural extension of search and or social media. But you know, everybody wants to get hyper-connected to consumers and have natural conversation. But indeed, like Natalie, what do you see? Like, what does the engagement really look like right now? Can it really feel real?
I think the opportunity is very, very real. The fact that brands can now have the potential to have conversations with human beings and build one-to-one relationships at scale. I think the promise is enormous, and I think that conversational interfaces aided by bots are also fixing the problem mobile. So we know that 70-80% of digital time is spent on mobile, but advertising, for many reasons and in many ways, has been broken on mobile. So I think that conversational interfaces enable brands to actually build meaningful relationships with the consumers and earn their way into those people's lives. We have had some early successes and some also slightly less successful. Learnings, exactly. Lots of learning, basically, in the last year. But we did have a really, we did have a successful and kind of mind-blowingly successful, in a way, program for Sony Pictures promoting the Goosebumps movie, which we actually ran last October. So within Facebook Messenger, so before F8, when the Facebook Spot Store is kind of like open to the masses. So we actually saw some staggeringly good engagement rates. I think average conversation time was 10 minutes with Slappy, who was the main character in the movie. So,
With some it was hours, right? Like,
yeah, and with
hours.
some, it was literally like, I think some of the longest conversations were sort of 2.5 hours.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly, longer than the movie itself. And yeah, so I think, anyway, so to answer,
So there's a lot of
summarize, there's a lot
opportunity.
of potential. We've seen the potential of it, but I think it's generally, the space is not going away, but it's a work in progress.
Anybody have anything to add on that, or I think it's the opportunity's there.
I think the hardest thing in my role is knowing what is such a long way away that we shouldn't even be thinking about, what is such a long way away that we should be doing early tests with, and what is so close that we need to be jumping on it now. I think there are lots of technologies now that are massively overhyped and are going to take a really long time to actually change the world. So self-driving cars are a good example, drones, 3D printing. They're massively profound. We need to be looking into them, but we probably can't do anything with them now. For me, I don't want to sound miserable, but I find AI and conversational commerce to kind of be in that place. Like, we need to apply innovation to solve the problems that people have, rather than to keep on using these things as ways to generate press. So I worry sometimes that we're jumping on some of these things a little bit too early. And as a person, every time I've ever had any kind of experience with a bot so far, it's been a terrible experience. It's been like an automated phone system where you press 1 to do this or press 2 to do that. So I think we need to be mindful of the hype versus the reality.
Thank you. I
I have a more positive spin on that.
I was going to say, thank you for that perspective. I guess that there comes the notion of opportunity and learning. And Andrew, I think that when we were chatting on the phone, you were indicating that at MediaVest you take an interesting approach in terms of trying to understand where you're at with the technology, but educate clients. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been following bots and artificial intelligence for some time now, and there's amazing potential. But if you're doing it right, you could see the forest through the trees, and you can actually really activate that. Now, we're doing a lot of great work out of our Sapient Nitro group with artificial intelligence from a media perspective, just as far as utilizing that for media, not necessarily for chat, but actually optimizing how are you going to place media out in the space, understanding environmental signals that are coming from the outside and hitting people at the right time, right place with the right message. But after F8, which is Facebook's developer conference, got so excited, and immediately after the announcement, I worked with our partners at Facebook and hosted a Facebook Messenger Bot Accelerator, because I saw the potential. I mean, you have over 1 billion people on Messenger right now, and they're offering these amazing tools to have that one-to-one connection, which is like the holy grail for brands, right? How do you reach them at that point and hold on to them? And we hosted this Facebook Messenger Bot Accelerator, which is fantastic, and we brought a handful of clients down there. And we worked actually with Message.ai, who's a fantastic vendor. That's who did the Goosebumps activation. And we basically, really strategized, understanding that 6 months down the road, there's going to be something big that's going to happen. That's exactly what I told them. They asked, why is a media agency kind of building a product or telling us how to build a product? And we had a very interesting group of stakeholders that came from our clients, a lot of developers, customer service, people who run the customer service trees, front-end, back-end developers, to really get them at the table, because it takes that whole team to understand how are you going to start taking your current infrastructure and merge that into a AI bot. And AI is a very critical part to building your bot. But it was fantastic, and we were able to basically wireframe and get our strategy going. And since then, 3 out of the 4 clients who participated actually came out and launched their bots. So what I told them up front is like, in 6 months, if you don't build this now or start thinking about it now, in 6 months when Facebook actually gives you advertising media opportunities connected to the Messenger bot platform, you're going to be a little bit behind. So it is critical to start thinking and at least start strategizing, if not building, how are you going to create a bot and how are you going to use artificial intelligence integrated into that bot to make it a platform that you're going to grow. Because again, 1 billion people on Messenger, you have Kik, you have Line, you have Slack for our business. There's so many opportunities and platforms that we could integrate with. And
I think in this conversation we need to be careful that AI is a massively exciting,
Well, yeah,
hugely
yeah.
positive thing, which is a whole world of opportunity.
Yeah, well, we're going to, I mean...
And then there's the opportunity, which is instant messaging, which is how do you have rich, personal, one-on-one
Exactly. I mean-
conversations, and that's amazing. But the intersection, which is where conversational, bot-driven commerce is kind of where this conversation's at.
Yeah.
And this that precise intersection, which I think is worrying at the moment.
Yeah, thank you, Tom. Yeah, I was just introduced by an old colleague, Fook, who said to me, Connie, it's too broad to go into AI as a whole. It's it's artificial narrow intelligence. So understood in terms of how we're doing it for commerce. But Scott, when we were chatting, you were indicating that you also have an approach and with dialogue that you put together to educate your clients and to get them, so you have, I think, 8 or 9 different test bots going in.
Yeah. So, I mean, first let me start by just saying, like, I've dedicated my career pretty much to being either too early or way too early. And I'm actually someone that believes that we're not at the ground floor with bots or messaging interfaces, but it's more sort of halfway up the tower, if you'll follow my analogy. So, and I think our investment in the space is indicative of sort of where we are in the cycle. So the Media Lab has basically created a specialty bot practice. And I think it's sort of the first of its kind in sort of an agency holding company environment. But we basically plucked sort of the best skill sets from different agencies. We've partnered with, I think, some of the leading vendors in this space. Everything from sort of structured conversation, sort of CRM integrations, e-commerce, and all those sort of APIs that are necessary to make a bot useful, as well as people that are really doing innovative stuff in the AI space. But yeah, I mean, I'd caution everyone the same about the AI stuff. It is like you said, a narrow intelligence, but there's still a lot we can do with it, right?
Yeah, Pete, when we had a conversation, you were just you started telling me a little bit about some of the things that get you excited. Can you share?
Well, I mean, I've been excited about this since I was a child. I think so. The first, I mean, if you're, as old as I am at least, like the first computers you used in the 80s, it was a text-based interface, right? Some of the first games you played were text interactions, right? So we've kind of like always seen the future of computers as something we talk to, right? That we don't have to learn a new graphical interface every time we want to do something new. We can just say what we want. And I think that's the nerd in me. That's what I really get excited about, right? But yeah, I mean, you think about utility for the brands and what excites me for them. It's this one-on-one connection with customers.
Excellent, thank you, Scott. Pete, can you share a little bit of your experience and your thoughts?
Turing test. So first person to ask a question that beats it wins. Abilities it has, but right now, like some of the folks here on the panel are saying, there's a lot of like faking it happening, right? Like there's a little bit of machine learning, maybe it's some fancy algorithms, some of which are just fancy sort and replace in some cases. What I think is particularly interesting is how we've evolved past the UI layer, from just going from like a URL, typing in a browser, to then we started communicating with hashtags and emojis, and I'm certainly simplifying this. What I think is particularly interesting is how we can understand intent at a deeper level. So how we can understand what a user's past behaviors are, and then how we can predict the future in a different way. I think some of the colleagues here talked a little bit about Facebook Messenger, Kik. Obviously, those things are evolving. What particularly interests me right now is how do you take past data or cohorts on your audience specifically, take all that clickstream behavior that's happening, and then start to combine that with smart AI, essentially. So how do you push that into machine learning using a smart corpus like IBM Watson or something to start to interpret that unstructured data in a way that gives you utilitarian value, right? So how do I recommend a trip based on someone's past trip behavior? So smarter travel booking. I think what Genius has done right now, Digital Genius, excuse me, the basically customer service platform for AI, is they've gotten a really good job at sort of what I call actor-based scripting, essentially, where they'll have people writing these scripts and these prompts and then using personality insights as an engine to basically have better text search, because most of these bots, really, they're just looking for words or emojis, and they're kicking back a pre-established statement, which is what you said. It's basically like writing BASIC on a Commodore back in the day, right? So I think what's really interesting to me is how do you do smarter recommendations? I think the automotive industry, food, we're doing a lot of work in food service right now on the CPG side. There's a lot of different ways to engage. I was really inspired by your Goosebumps thing. That got me thinking a lot about transmedia. How do we inject content and commerce at the same time? Because right now it's very like, I go on doing this one thing. I want to book a travel, or I want to book this thing, and I just don't want to talk to someone, right? Because we know that the millennial generation, while they want experiences, they want to just be able to fly through an ecosystem, and they want to just tap and push and get through it. They don't want the extra crap, right? So I'd love to hear sort of your thoughts on like how that comes back to play on the Goosebumps stuff.
Yeah, so actually what was really interesting in the Goosebumps activation is kind of by accident, we ended up creating a new platform for content. If you think about Goosebumps, it was originally books. Then it became a movie, and then it became like we just extracted its main character and made it a friend that someone could, that people could interact with and kind of keep up this sort of kind of pseudo, real kind of fictional kind of relationship. And then you think about, well, what's the core, what is entertainment about in the first place? It's about, you want to entertain people, but people want to get as close as possible to those characters. So essentially, we kind of just created a new platform for the franchise. And, I think it was really early days when we did it, and it was very much kind of like no one really knew what was going on, but kind of like looking back at it and looking at the time spent on there, like, people spending more time interacting with Slappy in Messenger than watching the movie, you kind of begin to think that these platforms are actually just new, that they're not just kind of solving a problem
different medium.
quickly. It's a whole different medium in and of itself.
And one thing I would say, just to build on what you just said, is like, what I would love to do, I would love my engineers to have access to that data corpus of all the back and forth dialogues, because at that point, you start mining that data, and essentially the characters of the future could be created through smart natural language.
This is what Facebook is doing with Wit.
Of course.
Yeah, which is really exciting.
So that's what I was going to say in terms of, so if you look at it really in the AI portion of it, obviously, a brand can't just mine all that data on their own, so you need the machines to do learning so that the data could be mined. And that, if you look at it from that concept, then you start providing the experience. But how do you advise an advertiser as they are going into the space to provide a valuable experience? Because obviously, as Tom, you were saying, what's out there right now is not pleasant experiences as such. So what do you tell your advertisers to do?
It makes me sound very boring, but I like solving problems. And for me, the best application of this will probably be in customer service to start with, rather than in commerce. Conversational commerce is not new. It's what used to happen when you went into a store and someone asked you how you were doing. And these days, it may well be that the best possible way to buy something is not to have a lengthy exchange online. It's actually just to pick what you want in a box and it to arrive. The big problem that we have in life is abundance rather than scarcity. Like, we have too much stuff. We have too many decisions that we have to make. We don't have enough time. So all of these solutions need to be ways to solve the problem better. It needs to be a way to allow you to buy something most quickly that's at the right size without thinking about it. So most of this technology needs to be layered through improving the customer experience. And what worries me most with AI is that we hope that people are going to come to our websites. We hope that people are going to show interest in our products. And the idea that we have this rare moment where someone shows this massive interest in a product and then we outsource that interaction to a bot is crazy. Human beings need to speak to other human beings, especially if they're high net worth customers. So it's pretty arrogant to take a customer that's spending their real life moments with us and then to give that away to a bot as if our time is more important than theirs.
Do you agree, Andrew?
Not fully. I do think it comes back to looking at the vendors who are out there right now and the technology that you could tap into. And yes, it's growing, and we're not, it hasn't fully evolved yet, but you have to look at what's going on right now in the space. And, some of our clients have millions of Facebook followers on their pages, and they are reaching out through Messenger, just by clicking on the message button and reaching out and asking questions. What we do, is what I do to kind of start the conversation with my clients about getting started with bots is I will go to their Facebook page, and especially particularly ones that have customer services that they provide, and I type to them. I say, do you provide service in my area? Or are there any deals or any specials? And what happens is the Facebook Messenger automatically says, this person usually gets back to you in about 48 hours. And I'm like, oh, great. So I type something in, and I say, do you have service in my area? And I wait. And I see the timestamp. And if they don't get back to me immediately with some answer, there's something wrong. And what happens is they come back with, copying and pasting what they were told to do in the customer service channel. People who are managing the social channels. They copy and paste, say, oh, check out our website for more info. That's not what's happening anymore. So now we can be a lot more intelligent about having all those responses, be that canned or make it feel more dynamic, and being able to push those out to those users immediately, because that couple seconds, if you don't have that attention, this is like our behavior today that we're kind of trained, instant gratification, and you want to have some sort of response to keep going, and it could be a simple answer. So yes, we provide service, or no, we don't, or at least respond, say, what's your address? And we show that to our clients, and they say, oh, and then here's what could be happening right now, and we bring them into the conversation and start strategizing around it.
I think that, if you look at Amazon and what they've done in terms of, their customer service and immediate, I mean, that sounds to me like it's a good and not a bad experience. I like it.
That's
I think
mainly
a bit.
human beings, though.
What I would say I think is really interesting to think about is just this idea of routing, right? So to your point earlier, it's like, it's like sort of, it's very Pavlovian, right? It's very stimulus response, right? So you interact with this messenger platform, and I think what's particularly important to me is how do you eliminate the friction that would happen when a junior or an outsourced customer service rep that's in a different country or doesn't know the colloquialisms tries someone off, excuse my French. So I think essentially what I'm saying is speeding up the routing to getting the right people. You mentioned high net worth individuals. We're working with a really large retail business right now, basically helping them understand at what point do you hand off, and it's very much like the operator, like the co-founder of Uber started. How do you go from at what point you're talking to a bot and you're being transparent about it to, okay, we know that this person automatically has to get routed to a real person and they better be senior and smart. So I think what's really interesting is you can model, what I love about the brain, which is what all this artificial intelligence stuff stems back from, is if you model some of your best customer service reps, you can listen to them on the phone, you can translate that into natural language, and then you can build really elaborate algorithm, not AI-based, algorithm-based decision trees. And those decision trees allow you to really amplify your customer service. We saw just recently in a closed test with, I think, like 1,000 people, the net promoter score going up by like 10 or 15 points, simply by shortening the time the person had to interact with something and getting better choices. So instead of showing me 5 choices, you show me 2 or 3, you're going to get to commerce faster. So I think the idea of conversational commerce, I think, is super early, but what I like about it is how do we mine the data of the real world events, that in-store journey you talked about, because we're not trying to replace it, we're simply trying to improve and embellish it, frankly.
And that, back to the vendor selection, it is critical to have that powerful technology, whether they're utilizing WIT API or WIT AI
or whatever.
API.ai, and all the AIs, making sure that they're leveraging the right technology, because as marketers, we have such robust data about our consumers from outside of messenger platforms, and even our clients have amazing first-party data, and we want to be able to aggregate that. We want to be able to analyze that in real time, something that would take a human, weeks, if not months, to really go comb through. The AI is starting to be able to do that for us in almost real time. And if you just look at your clients or your brands, Facebook pages and your admin, you can see that there's already thousands and thousands of message threads, and that data exists now. And you could just take that data and see what is that historical information that people are already asking, and you could get down to what are the top 100 things people are always asking us, and really help refine the responses that you're going to get. And back to like the conversion, like that's the most important thing, because you can start tailoring messages dynamically based upon who's likely to convert, who's in the middle of the funnel, and who's just not going to be responsive, and then start using your media dollars to reach them with the right message at the right time.
Also the language. One thing I want to punch in here is I think Watson gets a bad name because they're trying so damn hard to be cool, right? Yeah, IBM, you're trying so hard. Let's chat offline. But like in all seriousness, I think like their personality insights and their Alchemy APIs, if you guys haven't looked at those, do some really awesome stuff, right? So what I like about the personality insights is once someone's connected to you, you can scan all of their past social conversations that they've given you access to, and then you know how to speak to them. So if you're speaking to me, I want short and verbs. If you're speaking to you, maybe you want a little bit more eloquent kind of backstory, right? Maybe I'm going to use acronyms like, okay, perf, here's some outfits for you. Not to say that you talk like that, but I'm just saying in general, like my wife, she would want to hear me say those kinds of acronyms. But in all seriousness, knowing what to say and how to speak to someone, that also makes a difference. So I think we're actually going to see, I look at org design and I see the addition of chief data officer at companies that normally didn't have data people. Mm-hmm. That to me says the writing's on the wall. They're not going to have like the Wizard of Oz machine in the next 5 years talking to them, but they're going to start hiring different types of roles. And that's something that I would love to chat with you guys about, because I think we're seeing org design start to catch up now to innovation. And that's awesome to me.
Totes.
It's related to what you were just saying.
Totes.
What we've started doing, because you want an intelligent brand persona to engage with, right? Someone that wasn't just born today because the bot appeared today. It's got to have all of this prior knowledge, and it's got to be a smarter, more convenient, more efficient, more fun way to communicate with the brand than ever before. So actually what we're starting to do at in partnership with the lab is brand persona workshops, where we get all stakeholders, a little bit like kind of the Facebook kind of workshop that you were describing earlier. We get all stakeholders together to basically craft the persona of who your brand is. Because at the end of the day, there is no hiding. Like, these new conversational interfaces exist, and you will get asked questions. You will, someone is going to hit Messenger and ask you a question. So you better have some sort of persona, some sort of, story, something to say. And so, we're starting to kind of look at brands as social beings that can essentially be thrown into any social context, because of course these conversational platforms are inherently mobile. So what happens if you're at the Queen's Tea Party, or what happens if you're at the airport and your flight's delayed? Like, how would
context
your
drive
brand
it
actually behave in those different contexts? But I love the idea of mining all that actual data and using that in these workshops as well.
We're using vision now as well, so image-based stuff. There's a couple of really cool ones. So recently we've been working with a really interesting platform called Intelligent Artifacts, and they've actually got, in my opinion, a cognitive processor that's superior to IBM Watson, and I should probably not say that because we're working with them, and that's biased. But in all seriousness, you can run.
Everyone's working.
Yeah,
with
everyone's working. Yeah, you can run and get really awesome classifications now, and high confidence matches on what are you posting on Instagram. I can scrape that, look at your photos, and pretty much generally see what kind of colors you use. What's your favorite filter? Is it a picture of a dog, picture of a cat? We've all seen those different examples. But if we know that people love animals, and everyone loves animals, right? But if you know that people love animals, hit them back with a print that matches that in a fashion
so
brand
in
or something.
essence, what needs to be done is to, in a cold technology like AI, bring the warmth to it, which is bring the personality
Empathy.
and such.
Yeah. Good luck.
And
I mean, this is not new. This is just good customer service. Like, a person that's worked in the store will know how to speak to each customer individually. And I think as people in this audience or here, we wear two hats. We wear our hat, which is our job, which is to promote this stuff and love it and learn it. And we wear the hat, which is us as a normal human being going about our life. And at the moment and the near future, we are in a situation where most people hate dealing with chatbots. They hate someone saying, hello, how are you, when they know that it's just a computer going through a script. So we have to start looking ahead, and we have to start having philosophical conversations about what sort of customers we want to serve in what sort of ways.
Yeah.
And some of this much more transactional stuff will be very, very well suited to bots and automation. Some of the more human, emotionally building sales experience will probably always be done best by a human being. When Discover cards celebrate the fact that, one, they have human beings, and two, they work in America in American call centers, they do that for a reason, because these people really care about the quality of service that we have. But lots of the work that we need to do is about use cases and the best way to solve each particular use case. And it may well be that bots are only a small part of this, and it may well be that some of this stuff isn't really AI. Like, a lot of the things that you're talking about today are not AI.
Completely agree.
It's just very smart programming that is just lots and lots of and if statements. So we need to sort of really have philosophical conversations about, will machine learning be such that actually these scripts can auto-generate, where devices can have personalities, where you can feed brands as code into into a system and they can live and breathe and become human. Those are much more interesting conversations.
Well,
to have.
and I think that, obviously because all this is in the nascent state, this is why we're having this discussion, because, it is, there's validity in everything that you indicate. But I think that, one of the things, Scott, when I spoke with you, you were saying something about it's about interpreting natural language and having it become.
Well, right, yeah, this is the space where, I think there's been a lot of progress over the last few years, which is natural language processing, right? So it's a field of artificial intelligence. And it's really being able to understand user intent, right? I happen to believe that people aren't all that upset to be talking to a robot. And in fact, I'd rather talk to a robot more often than I'd talk to some call center person. But what's really frustrating is when the bot doesn't understand, when you're like, what's the weather today? And it's like, I don't know, chicken. That's problematic, right? But what we've gotten, I think, a lot better at over the last just 2 years is being able to understand that user intent and route that query to the right response. And I think that's where you're seeing all of the innovation in terms of the platforms and with Facebook's Wit. And I think that's going to continue aggressively over the next year.
Yeah, I'd love to walk into a store, pick up the phone, and talk to somebody on a call center who can speak 52 languages based upon what I'm speaking, and the chances of that are very small. But now we're looking at multivariate tonality testing.
Dynamic
A bot can do that
you
super
talk
easy.
about, yeah.
Exactly, and so it knows the characters you're using, it knows what your language preferences based on your settings.
Shorthand, I mean,
Immediately start talking to you in the right language, and I think there's a huge opportunity there to reach multicultural audiences who are not speaking English, but they're active customers and want to be part of the conversation. And now we can actually reach them intelligently and in context and in their language, and that is so powerful. And that's happening right now. So it's only, we're going to jump leaps and bounds in just the next couple of years about what type of content and how we're going to advance. If you look at just, again, Messenger, what they've come out with from F8 to today and all the updates they've done as far as, helping navigate and making it more user-friendly, it's unbelievable. The Allo is a great example of using the buttons that just automatically know what to kind of respond to next.
So as you advise your clients, Natalie, in terms of going in and doing this, what's your advice to them? What are they weary of? What are the learnings that you've had that you can apply to, because it's an evolution, right? We're just at the start of the evolution in terms of how this can be used and such, but it's going to be used because ultimately consumers will not be able, manufacturers, brands will not be able to have the conversations with consumers unless they mine all this data and they're able to do it. So what are the kinds of things that you tell your clients?
So it's kind of interesting. So with the Goosebumps activation, at the time, quite honestly, I don't think people really thought it was much of a success. It's just afterwards when we kind of had a chance to breathe and kind of look at it and we're like, actually, there was something very successful about that. I think one of the things that you realize is it's new. It's somewhere that we have to play and somewhere that we have to experiment with. But it takes a little bit of courage and it takes a little bit of trial and error. And I think that's like with all of these new platforms, where we were talking earlier, whether it was apps, creating an app that will seem, fraught with concern. And then next is like social media. My goodness, people can talk back to you. And of course, this is literally people talking back to you. And then you've got, continue the conversation.
They could say anything.
You could say bloody anything, exactly. In fact, in the Slappy example, people did say anything. People did say anything. And then the client was like, we can't have people saying things to Slappy like that. But no, the other thing is no one could see it because it's in a private conversation, but we could see it on the back end, and we actually shut down those users. But there's something kind of pretty amazing about it.
Abusing the bots.
Abusing the bots.
Oh, don't give me the humanity of it.
They got shut down, but they got so attached
really
to the
upset,
bot.
right?
They got people were so attached to the bot that we have all these recorded conversations saying, "Please talk to me again. I didn't know that if I said that, you'd stop talking to me." So there are lots of learnings just in that. Like warn people that if they continue to say words like that, then they risk getting blocked.
I have a weird relationship with my assistant Amy from X.AI. It's like she's just getting better and better every day. Like people. Like you guys have heard of X.AI, right?
Mm-hmm.
This panel, they better have, or we kick us off the panel, right? But it's so awesome because Dennis Mortensen, the CEO, is actually hiring actors to sort of write these scripts, right? And he's, genius guy, obviously. But what's so awesome is people, when I'm copying Amy.xi or I think Alfred.xi, you can get either one, gender or whatever, it's like people will like apologize to her and that sort of thing, and I'm calling her now. Here I go, right? And mistake this bot for whatever. So now I've started saying, okay, meet my robot assistant, blah blah blah, and then not my regular assistant, right? So it's like that's so crazy to me that we're building these relationships. But I think what brands need to know is that it's not about trying to fake human, right? We're not going to fake human anytime soon. We're not back to Blade Runner, right? I think what we need to do is advise our customers, and we're doing so, I'm sure you are as well, to understand the role that these bots can play in improving customer service, reducing friction. We all talked about that.
Yep.
So buzzwords aside, I think it's about, as you sort of, it's like, how do you train your dragon? How do you train your AI? So one of those things where if I had a personal shopper bot that learned my preferences and the bot had a name and I knew it was a bot, I'm gonna have a lot more like tolerance for stupid mistakes and that sort of thing, as opposed to like, hello, nice to meet you. Like, I think when brands fake real people, it's no different than talking to someone in like an Indian call center. Like, you want to like smash your phone on the table in front of you. I'm sure we've all been there, right? So I think what it comes down to is how we can be fun with it, because everyone wants to play with robots. I mean, I'm sure you guys saw the Google Ventures thing where one of the things that they were piloting was like robot concierges that would show up and bring you things in a hotel room, right? Like, if a robot showed up at my door, I don't care how stupid it is. I'm gonna be like, awesome, it's a freaking robot, right?
I'm not
so
sure
I think
everyone
what we have
wants to play with robots. Like, it may well be that if you're trying to learn a bit more about a movie and you're bored and you're curious on a Friday, that you want to play with the Goosebumps app. If you've got a fucking water leak in your house and you try and get through to the water board to close down the leak, you don't want to play with a robot. You want someone that's actually going to empathize with it and sort it out quickly. So I think we just need to be much more mindful of what's in it for people in all this.
Yeah, and I think that's that's the bottom line in terms. This is all about enriching the consumer's experience and facilitating what their needs are, or the culmination of their needs.
And the reality is at the moment that it probably in no use cases is this a better way to serve people. Very soon it will be such that you can help people much more quickly, and instant messaging will be in a profoundly exciting way for you to have conversations with people in a one-on-one way. And it may be that some of those transactions are best outsourced to a bot. But I'd say for the moment, customers are far too important for us to risk pissing them off, not serving them, treating them badly just because we want to try a bot for a bit.
That's why I'd say that, like, I think the right experiences to work on now are things not to replace what already works well in terms of customer service or whatever, but like what could we never do before? And I think that's what I try to encourage my clients.
Because I know we're about to run out of time. We'll highlight one thing which we haven't really touched on, which I think is enormously helpful for us as marketers from conversational marketing in general, are the insights that you get from those conversations.
Yeah.
In the case, again, of the Goosebumps program, we found that we could segment the conversations based on the types of things people were proactively asking about. So yes, they want to know about the characters, they want to know where the movie's being shown, they want to know when the DVD is being released, they want to know all those like standard things. But something that we didn't anticipate was the fact that people were proactively looking for merchandise. So that, like, it has the potential. So we're like, okay, we hadn't even thought about that. But it's like, let's make
You mean
merch,
the
let's
tiny
make it
number of people
available.
that were curious about the bots were people interested in merchandise?
But
this is a very, very unreflective.
If we want, so taking a step back, we want the Goosebumps franchise to live on. We've created a new platform for it in messaging.
And you know what your consumer
messaging
wants.
in and of itself can lead us to the next platform, which could be merchandise. I'm just saying, like, we can start to mine the conversations and the emotional responses to a brand through these programs.
But you were able
economic
to
values
update
there,
the
though,
bot
too, right?
because you ended up selling tickets to that. So you were able to actually generate some revenue, big or small, but you're actually generating revenue and ticket sales by updating the bot because you had the right backend.
I want to build
it to Amazon where you can buy the merchandise and all that stuff.
I want to build on the sort of water in the basement analogy, because I think, Tom, I'm really glad you brought that up. I completely agree with you. I think it's like, even some of the biggest brands that, we work with some of them, all of us together, right? They still have relatively small global customer service teams, right? So I think what's particularly interesting is, the person with the water leak in their basement, they don't want to call and be sitting on a wait time going through like prompt to death hell, right? We want to get them in and out fast. And we can do that whether they're calling, whether they're using the app or the website, or whatever it is. But what we don't want to do is when someone's got a stupid billing issue or they forgot their password or any of the things that we can do, I'm simplifying, we want to get the person with the leaky basement serviced the fastest, so then that service person can really use their empathy to make that person's day better. So I think that one of the things that we're advising some of our customers is that they don't have enough customer support, right? Even some of the global brands we work with, they can't hire great people fast enough, or it's costing too much money to service them. So what I think is really, really exciting to me is how do we use machine learning? I'm not going to say AI because I'm very clear of the differences in what we do, but I think using classification and machine learning with these great vendors that some of the folks on the panel said, I think we can start to get better with predictive, so we know what's the layer of, is this customer going to leave, right? You could look at churn data and figure out, you know, if something's going to cause a person to leave based on that. You know, and I think the place we should look at and model is the financial industry, right? Look at what they've been doing for the longest time with like figuring out, do you get your loan approved? Do you get your loan denied? Like they've had machine learning for the better part of a decade. I think if we take that and make it a little bit sexier, we can drive economic value for our companies.
I think there's, you know, there's so much. I want to be mindful because we're going to wrap up soon to see if we want to open it up to the audience for any questions, because obviously there's just so much knowledge here.
Yeah, I've got one. If you could talk a little bit about voice. Not long ago, I was in an airport, and you've probably all seen this, and someone was shouting in their phone, "Agent, agent, let me speak to an agent." And you know what they're doing, obviously. Where do you see, two questions, where do you see voice in this? And we all know Alexa and all that stuff. And do you look at tiering like they're doing with if you're a Centurion card at Amex, you get a special phone number. So you have like special bots for the good people? Or is it going to be one bot for everybody?
It's
Diamond
actually,
preferred status bot. Yeah.
well, that's the thing. We could actually dynamically know who is each person, every single individual, who are they, and provide them with that one-to-one message that is personalized to them. And that's the beauty of it. It's not one-to-many. Now we actually know every single customer. They could authenticate with their account, so we could drive into that data and really know who they are, what services that they already have, what have they purchased before, to be able to instantly know that you could just tell it and it will respond with the right response.
Can they authenticate with their voice?
Yes. But the thing is that we're past that time to pick up the phone, dial in the number, put the last 4 digits of your social security, your mother's maiden name, her birthday, and then
do it
just
again when they
10,
pick up.
15 minutes later, tell them again. It's like the millennial generations will not stand for that, and that's where you're going to have to start using bots and these messaging platforms, which billions of users are on, and go right in there and be able to hit them with that right message.
But on the voice side, I mean, it's all the same infrastructure. So the really cool thing is once you've developed a chatbot for Messenger, let's say, you could deploy that on Amazon's Echo.
Yeah. The interesting thing, Scott and I had a bit of a debate earlier as to whether we think that it's about voice or text as kind of like the dominant medium for conversational interfaces. Yeah. And I think that I stand by
winning?
Text. I think, well, I don't know, I'm going to have the last word though.
I think it's both. I think the answer is both. It just depends on context.
Yeah.
When the natural language gets, like when Alexa gets as good as Jarvis in the Iron Man movies, then I'm pretty sure none of us are going to be texting.
Yeah, the voice. Yeah, because the voice could be pissing. I mean, like me and Siri, we don't get along.
Yeah.
She doesn't
No, Siri's
understand me at
terrible.
all.
Think how often we choose to text though versus speak to someone. There's something really controlled about text, right? You can reply when you want. You don't have to think about your environment.
Right.
You don't need to think about your context. I think, and then also, we think about sort of interfaces getting more and more natural, as they become more and more invisible. But at the end of the day, we are dexterous beings, and I think we are meant to have tools, and I think that having that distance between yourself and your device.
We have another question over here. And if when you ask a question, if you could state your name and company, that'd be great, because this is being streamed live and recorded, and all the videos will be on the website starting tomorrow.
Thank you. Hey guys, a great panel. Anthony from Snaps. We are a mobile messaging company and we work with some of these folks. Talked a lot about bots. Great to see some differences of opinion on that, which is awesome. Something you didn't talk about is what Apple are doing with iMessage. They're making a big play in this space to take on Facebook and WhatsApp and others. Any comments from anyone on who's going to win, bots versus apps, or does it end up being some sort of duality in the future?
It's funny, I was going to bring that up about how do you approach your clients and advertisers about this, and actually what I'm doing now when we're ideating together is when they do bring up an app, how can we actually think about that as not an app, that we don't have to have a download campaign to get people to download on their specific phone, but just implement and push that with the same technology and the same experiences right into a chat messenger that people already have installed. And it makes that like less frictionless experience, and we could connect like the APIs, the content, right to that chat experience that will have the same output and experience that an app would have. Now, there's obviously different things that certain apps would do, but can you simplify it to like a lowest common denominator so that way you can implement that directly into a chat app that's already on all of our phones?
It's very hard to answer this briefly because that's a huge conversation itself. But I think broadly speaking, we've got three different altitudes here. We've got the altitude of apps, we've got the altitude of a subset of apps, which is instant messaging, and then we've got the altitude below that, which is the very specific solution of using software to have a conversational type environment. I think broadly speaking, apps are probably going to fade into the background as they become much kind of thin bits of contextual information that come to us at the right time in the right place. I think instant messaging will become the primary way that we navigate the internet. I think it's going to become the new portal where everything that we do is through an app. If you go to China, like it's not iMessage and Facebook Messenger or Kik that are leading the way. It's WeChat, it's Line. That's how you do everything in your life. So instant messaging will become a vastly important interface with the whole world around us, and bots will play a very small role for the foreseeable future in that place until they get good enough for them to take over humans.
But I think that iMessage being like, the fact that iMessage is opening up to brands is massive.
For Apple, yeah.
Yeah, for Apple.
Yeah.
And for us,
Yeah.
quite frankly. Like if you've got a retail client of ours, thinking about like, well, which messaging space are we going to place our bets on? Where are we going to start building our conversational infrastructure with consumers? iMessage is kind of a sure bet. It's nice not to be, having to rely on third-party apps like Messenger and be kind of at the, at risk of any change they might want to make. I think it's like you're kind of building a more grassroots presence.
You'd probably be on both. You wouldn't be on the Safari web or the Chrome web. You'd be on the web. Like you need to find a way to make sure you integrate.
Well, I think that's all about how we architect things, right? If you start thinking about our systems like operating systems, and like we don't want to put too much emphasis on one platform, right? The whole idea of not having you download the app because you can do it inside of the app, we want to push and pull people through that. I think text is the new URL. We've been saying that since we saw WeChat doing really interesting things. But I think how you tap into that's really it's an arms race for the platforms, right? You mentioned, I think one of us mentioned API AI, which Google just bought. Like everyone's swallowing it up. So I think Google, Facebook, Apple, they're all sort of battling for the best. And I think the more we start seeing this become more ubiquitous, which I think is going to take a few years, then you're not going to be on Safari web or Chrome web. You're going to just be on the web, like Tom said.
Yeah,
obviously
we've only been able to like hit the top of the iceberg, and there's so much more. And it's in its infancy, and it's all about the learnings, and it's all about building on it for the future. I want to thank you all for being patient with me and for providing so much knowledge to the audience. Scott, Pete,
Thanks.
Natalie, Andrew, and Tom, thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Great job. Thank you, Connie. That was a substantive kickoff. I'll run into him before that because of the content that he was looking at. Basically, the new, what I consider, and I think he considers, the new form of where advertising is really going. Hayden is the Chief Creative Officer of Hacker Agency. He sets the creative and strategic vision for the agency and clients while overseeing all of the user interface development, motion graphics, and studio. As a creative leader responsible for over 2 decades of award-winning shops, including Gray, Wonderman, Cossette, and others, his clients have ranged from Audi and AT&T to MasterCard and Microsoft. Please join me in welcoming Hayden to the stage. Oh, here he is.
Sorry, I was hiding on the left. Oh, thanks very much. This was I will say thank you, Chuck, for the introduction. There was a really interesting panel before us, before me. This was a very hard deck and presentation to make because there's so much, I think to Tom's point earlier, there's so much hype, there's so much news. You can't go one day without something new coming up, someone saying something provocative, Satya saying that AI should be everywhere, Livingston saying that chat's the new OS, Allo surpassing 5 million downloads, I think, just yesterday. So it's a very fast-moving topic, and it's a very It's a very interesting topic. I don't purport to have all the answers, mostly because this is such a... Conversational design is really the next wave of UX and ID, and interaction design. We're going away from screens to more conversation with machines. We're going into more ambient peripheral senses with how we interact with machines. And ultimately, this is going to have a huge impact on CRM, on brands, on marketing, acquisition, loyalty, and business models. We can argue about execution, we can argue about believing the hype, we can be contrarian, we can do all these things, but the reality is that the tide, you can wish against the tide, but the tide is coming in and going out. So conversational design is the next wave of UX ID, and I'll get into that a little bit more. Mostly today, what I want to talk about is, first of all, brand roles. A brand's idea of what it is itself and how it portrays itself and how it interacts with customers on a one-to-one level. I'm going to hit a little bit about AI and smart machines. Obviously, the panel before me discussed that a lot. I'm going to get into a little bit about what Microsoft is doing, some of the more keyboard caddish applications of AI and what it might mean for chatbots, agents, and assistants, which are ultimately becoming a better way to automate customer interaction. So the first question to bring up really is, what role does your brand play? Roles historically, when they were created and when they were erected for the world to see, existed on an archetypal scale. For instance, Nike was the hero and is the hero and the warrior. Some are king, queen, jester, sage, etc. So we use these kind of Jungian archetypes to define our brands as symbols, but that's a very 20th century outdated way to create a brand and to manage a brand. You simply can't take a $100 million media buy, stand at the top of the mountain and continually proclaim, this is who I am, this is what I symbolize as a brand. The digital revolution of the last 20 years, and someone earlier today was talking about the customers having all the power, and what I like to say is the deer have the rifles, in a sense. With customer-directed, customer-controlled environments and with customer interaction happening in real time on one-to-one in social, through chatbots, through word of mouth, through product experience, through customer service, you can't simply proclaim to be something and be a symbol. You have to interact with people on a one-to-one level. So brands, is it product, is it symbol, is it promise? It's all of these things on some level. Classically, it was a product, then it could become a symbol and eventually became a promise. But what I would posit is that today, with the level of interaction we have with brands and the opportunities that brands have to have one-to-one real-time conversations with customers, is that brands are really a person. And I'm not going to put any logo up there because I think you can use your imagination with what some of the more flexible 21st century brands out there. Whether it's a functional brand like an Uber or a more customer-centric brand like an Amazon, which wants to become all things to all people. Necessarily, you can say brands are people too. They play an active speaking role in our lives. What personality do they have? What promise do they give? What's the value exchange? When you think about a brand role, let's take a role. When you go on an archetype like a king, okay, I know what a king is, but I've never been in a room with one. I don't know how they interact with me. But I know what, say, a teacher is, or a mentor, or a concierge, or whatever it is. I know these roles that things play. So when there's a teacher, there necessarily has to be students, and there has to be a value exchange. There has to be learning and instruction that goes on. So it's the value exchange between brands and people that define their roles. And that becomes a much more fluid, flexible thing for brands. So brands really are people. They're just like you and me. You affect a different tone, tenor, and content when you're talking to your peers at the workplace versus your superior versus your direct reports versus your husband or wife or your children or your friends. That doesn't make you a schizoid, and that doesn't make a brand fragmented. That makes a brand more dimensionalized, and that makes you more dimensionalized as well. So brands really are people too. So Watson has been mentioned a few times. Is it a parlor trick when he won on Jeopardy? I mean, I've gone on record as saying I believe Watson will win a Cannes Lion next year. And and I hope Ken Jennings from Jeopardy actually goes on stage to accept it, but is it a parlor trick or is it real? There is intelligence there, obviously, with the diagnosis that happened recently, with the ads they're going to be launching this fall. There's something there. There's something substantive there. It wasn't a parlor trick when Google's AI beat the Go champion from South Korea. There's the first move. That's a big breakthrough. That's like Deep Blue playing chess. That's machines not only learning, but being able to teach themselves through repetition. What does AI mean to us? What if AI was everywhere? That's kind of what Satya from Microsoft said in Atlanta recently. Basically, Microsoft is making a huge investment. A lot of the big tech companies are making huge investments in AI, in machine learning, so there will be fruits of their labors, and it will happen. I mean, what will it mean in Office? What will it mean in Microsoft applications? What will it mean to the customers on their day-to-day life? Will it be seamless? It's really about execution, and we'll get into that in a moment. Who here has played around with MurphyBot? Anyone? MurphyBot, Skype bot, it's what I call light AI, using the Azure cognitive services and Bing. You basically can ask Murphy questions, it searches, and then creates images based on your question. I will give a shout out to my friend Kim at BBDO. She and I, about a month ago, had a back and forth with MurphyBot, asking more and more ridiculous questions of MurphyBot to see what we'd get. Here's some of them. They say never talk about religion or politics. I'm going to break one of those rules. What if Donald Trump was a puppy? Now you can see it very absurdly puts his face on a puppy. What if Donald Trump was made of ice cream? Obviously an even more absurd question. There's Donald Trump as ice cream, Donald Trump if he was a vegetable, and if he was made out of sausages. Now this is funny, you can joke about it, and it's a little ridiculous, but there's something happening here where MurphyBot is learning as he goes, as you ask questions, as he gets more queries. So, and there's Donald Trump as a sandwich, which is even more disturbing. So then you get into, if you ask it more different questions about yourself or you, like what if I was a ceramic hotel? Just two words that came to mind. That's me as a ceramic hotel, obviously with the devil horns. What if you were a satellite? These are kind of just surreal questions. They don't mean anything, but it still tries to answer them. It still makes an attempt. So we thought, well, what if Tim Robbins was Tim Robbins? Murphy's not smart enough to just put a picture of Tim Robbins up there. If you look closely, you actually see where it grafted his face on his face. So it put a picture of Tim Robbins over a picture of Tim Robbins. So, but what if you took some actors that portrayed famous people, and you get David Bowie as Andy Warhol, Jeremy Irons as Klaus von Bülow, and Josh Brolin as George Bush. Now these are all actors that portrayed these roles. They simply could have showed them in those roles. Murphy could have, but he didn't. He took the real actor and the real person and grafted them on top of each other. So what if you took two fictional characters played by the same actor? What if Han Solo was Indiana Jones, and you get Harrison Ford as Han Solo's face on Harrison Ford as Indiana Jones? So you take it further, what if Coke was Pepsi? I don't understand that. It's a little disturbing. Not as disturbing as what if Nike was Adidas? And what if Facebook was Amazon? So it's strange, it's weird, it's funny, it's keyboard caddish, like I said. It's a diversion. Really what it is it's an interesting way for AI to become something that people get more comfortable with. So is it cool or is it meh? Is it smart or is it stupid? Well, you could ask it, I won't read the whole thing, but what if I needed to launch an omni-channel campaign for a subscription-based entertainment product, disrupting an established industry in select geos, yada, 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 an existing database of hand raisers, basically putting forth a marketing question, basically a brief for a marketing campaign, and he says, wait, I'm still working on it and learning. I'll get back to you later on this one, and surely Murphy or one of his brethren will. So that brings us to the rise of the agents. If bots and chatbots offer a consistency, a precision, a savings cost to companies, to automate and kind of normalize their service, AI can offer the learning, and AI, machine learning, and data can offer that kind of hyper-personalization and one-to-one relevance. Is it better to train service reps or to program a chatbot for customer service? Someone had mentioned, I think it was Scotty from IPG Media Labs, that he'd rather talk to a robot than a bad customer service rep. What you have to remember is these are all brand interactions. Whether you're walking up to the counter in a J.Crew buying a shirt, or whether you're buying it online, or whether you're chatting with a J.Crew chatbot about sizes, it's still a brand touch. And to have that brand experience consistent quality and of the personality you want in the brand, it has to be programmed. The conversation has to be programmed and designed. Reps have to be trained. So what's the way to go? And I think that differs from brand to brand, vertical to vertical, consideration set to consideration set. But the agents, let's talk about the rise of the agents for a moment, because it's not just brands that have chatbots and smart machines. We very soon will have them, and search will become obsolete. We've seen it with Allo. Who here has played with Google Allo? Well, I haven't. The smart will not be revealed. Bot Nation is just some of the Facebook bots available. But what do they offer us? They offer us an incredible opportunity, but I think it was Tom earlier that was saying, we need to approach them with skepticism. I would say skepticism mixed with a little more hope. Reward is real-time, hyper-personalized, hyper-relevant, truly one-to-one brand conversations. The idea and the opportunity for brands to automate service and brand interactions that are truly automated, truly learning, hyper-relevant and hyper-personalized to each individual customer. Someone had brought up, if you are a premium level rewards person on an airline versus just a regular schmo who's flying on vacation, what level of service you get. Well, that's the beauty of it. The data will point you exactly, it's the same bot with a different set of data and a different level of things that they're willing to offer you. It'll be seamless, it'll be instant, and it'll be normalized, and that's really the key. I mean, think about your cable company. No one likes their cable company. Chuck and I were talking about this earlier. People despise their cable companies by and large in this country, and why? Is it because HBO doesn't work? Is it because you can't watch the Mets? No, it's because service. Service is horrible. You never know when they're going to show up. You stay on hold. They can't help you. Your bill is always different every month. It's a mess, right? Now, if Comcast were to somehow normalize and level set all of their customer service interactions so that they could expect a C-level, would that improve customer sentiment? Historically, when you look at brand sentiment indexes every year, cable companies are always ridiculously bad on the list, all of them. And that is because of their customer service. And that's because the experiences people have with the brand, not necessarily the product. The product, by and large, works pretty well most of the time for us, but it's the service that we experience. It's that feeling like you can't really get out from under them if you want to watch the Kardashians. That's where the resentment grows. If you could normalize that customer service, it could be a step in the right direction for them. There's really two kinds of bots right now. There's the rules-based ones, which are very simple, functional account information and changes. That's not a hard conversation to design. We've been doing it for years with IVR. And granted, it might be stilted, and granted, it might feel inhuman when you're talking to a recording on a telephone back in the 70s. But the reality is it served a function. And when you have that person screaming agent, agent, agent in the phone because they want to talk to a real person, there's just as many people that just don't want to talk to someone and just find out what their checking account balance is or whether a charge went through on their Amex. And they can do that in an automated fashion. They've been able to for years. This is just another channel for rules-based IVR. It's the machine learning that is really the horizon, and that's where conversational design comes into play. In fact, I do feel like the revolution will happen off-screen as the Internet of Things gains more traction, as we get towards our 50 billion connected devices by 2020, as this bright, utopian connected future devolves into a dystopian situation where everything's talking to you at once and everything's on a different operating system and your Wi-Fi goes out and you can't go to the bathroom because of your smart toilet, there will be a lot more opportunities for you to interact through conversation with that toilet that's not flushing. Last time I was here, I talked about the fact that the next step for Alexa was for her to start conversations as opposed to simply listen and react. And now, lo and behold, that's TechCrunch reported it last week, so I'm a seer, if you will. But how will Alexa do that? Will she simply give you a push notification? Some of the situations they talked about was a push notification. Like, for instance, I flew here from Seattle. Maybe the Echo in my living room would tell my wife when I landed or that my flight was delayed. There's the colored rings that can let people know in an ambient, peripheral, calm way that there's a message for them to attend to or an offer for them to thing. It might tell me that my Amazon Prime order is 5 minutes away. So I don't feel like every time I walk into I don't think we'll get to the point with Alexa, especially, that every time I walk into my living room, she'll address me like HAL 9000 in 2001: A Space Odyssey, you know, like, or not let me order something because it'll be bad for my cholesterol. But I do believe that we will get to a place where the machines can start conversations with us, not simply reply to our conversations and react to what our needs are. And here it is, bot personality is a UX ID challenge. Ultimately, we're going to be designing experiences that don't happen on screen. They're not graphic, they're not visual. We don't have to worry about where the button's placed. We have to design a conversation that embodies and personifies the personality of the brand. B, gets the customer to the solution they want. As someone brought up, if my plumbing is out of whack, I need someone to come. I mean, automating getting the worker there, whether that worker is a robot or a highly skilled technician, is going to be how these things can help us in a more efficient, effective way. When we get closer to smart cities, with urban planning and infrastructure being run on smart machines, and they know where the potholes will be and deploy the services to them. They'll know, based on the data set that they get, and that's constantly evolving, they'll know how long the green light should be at this intersection versus that intersection. So there's a question: can you automate emergency services? You know, if I call 911, will it be efficient? Can you normalize it? Will you not have those? You know, I think statistically and anecdotally, I don't know about 911 how it is, but you always hear once in a while of it going really well or really tragically poorly. So is the automation of emergency services something that we'll see from cities? I don't know. Chase and I were talking earlier, you know, if you break your iPhone, you can still walk into a Chase Manhattan Bank, no pun intended, and get your money and find things out. You can call them on the phone. But if the whole system, if the whole grid goes down, you'll have a little more difficulty, even if there's still a brick and mortar. You know, we see Amazon nudging closer towards having brick and mortar stores. There's been a lot of talk over the last year or two of whether they'd make a major purchase, maybe a JCPenney or a Radio Shack, so that they could actually streamline their distribution, but also have actual brick and mortar stores. In Seattle, they did open up a store. How do they take that radically customer-centric, amazing customer experience you have with them online and turn it into real world, when it's not always just their algorithm and their curation of what you might be interested in, and it's not just their automatic ability to refund you and, yeah, don't send us back the thing you got that was wrong, just keep it and we'll refund your money. How are they going to do that in the real world when it's actual people? It gets messy because maybe that person's having a bad day. But for now, bots is a UX ID challenge, and designing those conversations, designing those personalities is where designers have to go, and they have to think less visually and more holistically about the brand personality and the voice that it assumes. He has, as a smart home, did that this summer. Got an Amazon Echo in it, kind of uses it just to play music and, you know, ask if the Mets won, little things like that. But he said something to me yesterday. He's a real guy. He's a real guy. I was talking to him yesterday. Nice guy. he said to me something yesterday, and it really, I thought it was, here's a guy that's not a tech guru, it's not a Steve Jobs quote or a Satya quote or a Mark Andreessen. He said it's about the execution, not the concept. And I think that's really what we heard a lot of back and forth about up here, and that's ultimately what we as marketers or as brands or as communications professionals have to worry about. Is it's not the concept of automating conversations between brands and individuals. It's not the technology. The technology is there, or soon to be there. AI is, machines are learning faster. Processing speeds are getting better. Cloud bidding is the stuff of science fiction. There's literally going to be nothing you can't imagine and do with technology for the most part, but it's about the execution. It's about programming and designing the interactions between people and technology so that the brand does not in fact suffer. In fact, you get the savings, the efficiency, and the normalization of automation, but you also improve their experience. It can't simply be to save you money and automate things and normalize them. It has to be for a better customer experience, because as we saw earlier, customers have all the power. Customers will have an increasing amount of power, choice, not only in what they buy, but how they buy it and how they experience your brand. And if they don't like your brand's personality on Alexa or in a chatbot, chances are they're going to have someone else to go to. So there's the risk and the reward. This is a Gerd Leonard quote, and it leaves me with the last kind of big question, I think, that is ultimately about execution, ultimately about how we design these things, how we imagine customer experiences, how we deploy those customer experiences and optimize them over time, how we make use of all the magical data and technology at our disposal to create better experiences. Anything that can be automated will be, and anything that cannot will increase in value. Now, Gerd Leonard said this to me originally. I don't know who said it before him, but maybe he made it up. He's a smart guy. He was talking about it from an advertising and marketing perspective, from a creative perspective, in the sense that we've seen ad tech and marketing technology and marketing automation gnawing away, and we all kind of feel it closing in to take away jobs, the same way truck drivers will not have jobs in 5 years because we will have autonomous vehicles. If you are Walmart and you're shipping things all over this country, why on earth would you employ union truck drivers that have to sleep and have to go to the bathroom and have to eat and sometimes don't drive the speed limit, when you can have an autonomous fleet that leaves when it's supposed to leave, arrives when it's supposed to arrive, and takes out all of the guesswork and all of the messiness of human. Truck drivers may be out of jobs. Will marketing analysts and targeters be out of jobs? I don't know. But anything that cannot be automated will increase in value. So here's my question, and it's what I'm going to end on, is if things that cannot be automated will increase in value, are we destined to devalue things that can be automated? And that's the big scary factor, is just because you can do something in technology or in social media doesn't mean you should. And will we be devaluing customer experiences by automating them, or will we be smart enough and savvy enough and adept enough to design conversations and design brand experiences in an automated way with chatbots, et cetera, that enhance the customer experience as opposed to degrading it? So that's my question for you, and thank you very much for your time.
Great. A quick question, Hayden. Can you talk a little bit about your design theory, your approach, the atmospheric approach and so forth, where it's non-intrusive, how that fits with traditional advertising, and where kind of budgets come from, and what do you see as a transition?
Yes, well, the atmospheric approach, for anyone that's uninitiated, is a theory we've been going with that is kind of getting a user experience and a marketing tactic or strategy in line with the Internet of Things. As I kind of alluded to before, when we have 50 billion connected devices, when everything in your phone is connected and can communicate with you, customer distraction and customer attention span will be at an all-time low. It'll go lower than it is now. So the interruptive nature of marketing that's been our stock and trade since time began will potentially be very, very damaging to brands. I don't need my light bulb selling me pizza. You know, I don't need these things, and I don't want to be chirped at and constantly have push notifications in my face. Now, we have what, 5 senses? Yep, 5 senses. But for the most part, we've designed and we've marketed to people on screens visually. It's been about visual design. It's about graphic interfaces, whether it was stopping power back in the days of print when you were doing print magazines, or whether it was the kind of hook on a 30-second TV spot to get people's attention and keep them watching and give them a little bit of entertainment while delivering your brand message, or whether it was a strong OE teaser in a piece of direct mail that got people to open it and notice it. It was all about interrupting. It was about taking people off of what they were doing. Same held true in the early days of digital advertising with email subject lines, with banner ad displays. Anybody remember Punch the Monkey? These are just distractions, because one of the things about any digital property is that there's a functionality to it of the user being an active as opposed to a passive audience. They're actively trying to do something. They're searching, they're trying to watch something, and you get pre-roll. And no one likes pre-rolls. You just look at the skip ad button and you wait for that countdown. And if you're like me, has anyone here ever thought that those things are not seconds? They're longer than seconds. You're sitting there, it's like 5, 4, and it's like, these cannot be seconds. There's no way. You sit there and you watch that. So, you know, what Geico did with their pre-roll last year was great. But again, it's just it's a workaround, right? Because ultimately what pre-roll does, what a banner grab does, what a page takeover does, what all these ridiculously interesting continue to have the power, they will tune out, they will interrupt and distract. The approach into account designing pearls for ambient awareness to let people know there's this level above the actual marketing message, to let people know that there is a message, that there's something for them to attend to. It's the awareness level, the attentiveness level, and then the action level. Ultimately, you want people to take action. You want them to buy. You want them to resubscribe. You want them to like, share, click, watch, whatever it is. But it's not about just jumping in their face with the content. It's about making them aware that there's content for them to attend to. If you're a brand that delivers relevant, functional, and valuable information to them, and the product experience is good and the brand experience is good, chances are they will attend to your message. And the idea is, if you jump right in their face and you try to sell them pizzas via their light bulbs, they will tune out, and it'll ultimately damage you and potentially make you extinct. So does that answer your question, Chuck? Good.
Hey, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. Great job. The reason I think that's important in terms of the atmospheric approach that I'm sure Hayden's trademarked is that bots and chats are ultimately obviously going to play into that as well, as this stuff becomes sort of automated and seamless and essentially less intrusive. If the next panel could come up, that would be great. Now we're going to take a look at basically Snapchat and crafting a 10-second story. Basically, it's kind of Snapchat and beyond, if you will. This is going to be led by Michael Sivens, who's the Senior Account Manager of BB Clark and Myler. He's at the digital marketing agency. Before joining BCM, he developed and executed integrated marketing campaigns for Nickelodeon and ABC Family, and also produced and directed original content for PBS and the on-demand gaming series Best Game Ever. Please join me in welcoming Michael and his panel.
Hi. Hey, everyone. On my left, we've got Tamara Alisi, Managing Partner integrated planning strategy at MediaCom. Can I call you Tam? Yes. Okay, let's do Tam. Tam has a career spanning 20 years at several premier agencies. She's done some exceptional work for Revlon and Subway. We have Monique Lemus. Monique Lemus. She's a group director at Media Kitchen, where she oversees digital media strategy and buying for Victoria's Secret Pink, along with multi-channel media strategies for Lane Bryant and Dress Barn. She also has a degree in psychological and brain sciences, which I think is, somewhat apropos for a day about chatbots. And we also have Anna Nikonorova, director at Analect Labs. She's excelling in rapid software development, including the development of AI projects, including but not limited to chatbots, Twitter bots, ad fraud bots, and also integrations with Alexa, right? Awesome. So when I was confirmed to lead this conversation, it was very exciting for me. I was kind of had some fun throwing myself down a rabbit hole where I'm thinking about my own fascination with short-form content, things that are short. I remember being young and thinking, the things that were really short were really fun. I remember there was a They Might Be Giant song called Fingertips, if anyone remembers. That was a collection of 21 different songs, all played consecutively. Each one was about 5 seconds long, and I thought that was hilarious at the time. I was thinking about John Zorn. He's an avant-garde jazz musician who changes musical styles every few seconds, but all the while it's still the same song. And while I was, had the opportunity to kind of have fun thinking about this stuff, I think we'll always have short-form content, but the ways in which that we're accessing it, the ways in which that we're sharing it, the ways that in which we're viewing it, the ways in which that we're being able to discover it is what's constantly changing and what's evolving. And that's why I'm very thrilled to have this panel, a very eclectic group of guests to talk more about that. I think it's very easy for people to say that things are getting shorter, that people have a desire to have things as short as possible. As time goes on, people don't have long attention spans anymore. And I think to some degree, they may be right. But when you start to think about how messaging apps, social platforms are now allowing you to not only access a 1-second video, but now you're able to string multiple 1-second, 3-second, 5-second videos together to create much longer stories. And I think that says a lot for, it's a testament to the fact that, don't rule us out yet, people with long attention spans. I think we can still hold on. So. That being said, I'd love to open it up to the group and see, if there's what you think, apart from apps now like Facebook and Instagram, allowing you to string, essentially moments together to create these longer stories comprised of short videos. What other trends are we seeing in the landscape?
So to touch on Michael's point about lack of attention, I think the biggest thing that interested me about having a conversation about with this panel was, it's why should they care, why should they share? And when you talk about video content, whether it's 10 seconds, whether it's 5 seconds, whether it's long form, we pushed a video for our client Revlon that ended up being 4 minutes, and we thought it would get no attention, and it ended up being an award-winning piece of work. It's because we gave the consumer a reason to care and a reason to share. So I think with anything that you're doing in terms of social or in terms of video trends, if you can give that consumer that reason, you'll actually have a lot of success for your brand and ultimately for your business goals.
Yeah, and actually adding on to that, looking at from the consumer standpoint, I think we probably all agree with this, that we've come to expect that, it's not a Einstein quote here, but expect that we can get video however, wherever we want it. So it's accessing it for whatever length you want, being able to control how long it actually stays live and visible, and being able to have a curated selection of videos that you can watch so that it's all personalized and made specially for you. And then when you do that well and you have the right piece of content that fits that, then people will watch it.
I think the automated production of content is becoming increasingly fascinating. The previous panels mentioned computer vision briefly, and I think that's the most amazing part, when we can convert the content into data, slice it and see what people like. Let's say it's a watermelon, and then we can start producing a lot of content about watermelon because we can see that these are the objects and these are the interesting things that resonate with people. So data-driven content production, I think that's the most fascinating part right now.
Right, and I think that the utilization of chatbots, I think, is going to help us sustain, the long attention span, so to speak. Giving people the opportunity to help discover and create based on, predictive reasoning. Is there any apps that you think that when you hear short app that you immediately think, are we at a place where we have, Facebook and Instagram now allowing for stories? Are they, essentially, stealing? Are they cannibalizing each other's audiences? How do you all think? What do you all think of when you basically? What's your go-to resource when you think short-form video?
So I think the first one that comes to mind automatically is Snapchat, because it is. While it started off as a messaging platform, it really has become a way to share videos. And for the most part, those videos are 10 seconds. And they have changed it up a little bit so you can put together smaller videos and make a longer video. But in the end, it's that 10-second snippet that's really what makes up Snapchat, especially from the advertising perspective, which is probably why, I think there's a lot of conversations around how Snapchat's cannibalizing the Facebook, Instagram audience, or vice versa. Is there going to be any competition between Snapchat and Instagram with the stories? But I think because Snapchat is so founded on that snackable 10-second video, whereas Facebook and Instagram can do more, I feel like they all can play together.
Yeah, I mean, for a lot of the clients we're doing work with, I think that kind of the top 4 apps tend to be, obviously YouTube is significant reach, and you have the territory to play there when it comes to video. Snapchat is, fueling. I think they say now that you can reach half of the millennial audience in a given day on Snapchat. But Instagram and Facebook still are extremely relevant. It's just the role, I think, in which you use them has changed, where Snapchat has become much more conversational and is about discovery. Facebook is much more about almost commerce, and Instagram is really about inspiration. And so how you use that creative in each of those places has changed in a way that makes it unique, but definitely still relevant.
I think you had a good example citing the Olympics as just a good case of people desiring content but being unable to get it, I think, in the most traditional sense.
Yeah, Subway's a client of ours, and we are not a ring holder, but we do partake in the Olympics. And what we found very interesting for any of you who do have clients that participate in the Olympic Games is that the overall TV ratings were down about 20+%, but we actually had integrated our buy in a way that we were able to capture all of that viewership in streaming. So I think that's a trend we'll continue to see. Consumers are continuing to watch video. It's just obviously where they're consuming it. And so we found that we actually over-delivered on our complete buy by capturing those streaming viewers for the Olympics.
The idea that Facebook and Instagram are sort of playing on both sides of the fence as far as offering stories, ways for them to string along these shorter bits of content. By offering both, by trying to tout themselves as resources for both short form and long form content. Do we really need to even make that distinction? Is it just content? By offering both short form and long form content, are they being perceived as a resource for neither?
So I oversee a lot of retail business, and social is huge for us just in terms of getting both videos of what we like to call the dancing models out, and then also just actual videos that tell stories. And I would say that we really use both Facebook and Instagram, and I think I wouldn't say it's neither. I would say that they're really great platforms to distribute content, whether it is that 15-second video that doesn't really tell much of a story but lets you really just feature product, or if it's a longer, minute-long video that goes behind the scenes and tells the story. And I think the lesson really is that you can't just put whatever you want on there. You have to make sure that it's something, whether it's a short video that gets the message across really quickly and is useful for the consumer, or if it's a long-form video, make sure it's something that people will want to watch, because otherwise you're just blasting them with videos that they're not going to consume.
Yeah, I think in most instances, we find that Instagram is really strongly used for inspiration. And the way that the consumers are consuming it, no pun intended or pun intended, is that's snackable, it's easy, and the fact that it is 10 or 15 seconds at most is actually part of that user journey, because the way that the consumer is obviously swiping down. With Snapchat, outside of that environment, we have found that the 10 seconds is a great way to capture some attention, but now with the way that Snapchat has expanded their platform and you can swipe up into the story, we've actually found clients having great success with 1, 2, 3, 4-minute stories. That, the way that the user algorithm works, and I'm, still getting myself used to it. But you swipe up and then you swipe right, and it really engages the consumer. And what I love most about it is that while it doesn't have a share function, it absolutely still captures the, why do you care, why do you share? Because consumers take pictures of it and then share it out on their other platforms. So I think Snapchat has been winning because they're helping millennials to find a way to be relevant in their own voice. And then I think that Facebook and Instagram are still super relevant because people often share their snaps in those environments. And so brands are learning how to win in that way too.
Do you think brands should be flexible during these types of production processes? I think that there's a belief that well, you could just shoot one 30-second video and then you'll cut it up 5 different ways for 5 different platforms. And obviously there's a lot of problems with that. But how hard is it? Anecdotally, can you speak to getting brands to be more flexible during a shoot or an edit, whatever the case may be?
So we've been having tons of conversations about this, and whether you're a brand or an agency, the biggest piece of advice I would give you is that you need to shoot for the space. So when it comes to Snapchat, you can't even just think about video, you have to think about vertical video, and you have to think about how you create in that environment so that the consumers that are mostly millennial don't actually laugh you off the platform. We've had lots of lessons learned by many brands, some our own, some others, that you don't want to just take a TVC and run it everywhere. You definitely need to think about how you can be creative, and even if it's B-roll with a mobile phone, there's a lot of brands that have had success, like even during Fashion Week, taking video with their mobile devices and actually using that, turning that into ads. Michael Kors did that, and it was actually quite beautiful. So I think, we're having a lot of conversations with our global creative team with some of our clients right now because they are still used to shooting in a very professional light. But the best performance often comes from an influencer video or something that's done in a little bit more of a raw moment, because the territory that Instagram or Snapchat give you is that you can be that way.
I've seen it where we'll get a video from some place and we'll say, okay, well, what does it look like for Snapchat? And we'll say, okay, give us an hour. And then 1 hour later, it comes back and you can tell that it's just been, they just kind of cut it off. Had someone do it very quickly, and then you can see that it's just magnified to fit the Snapchat's video specs. So done very crudely. So thinking about these things, I think, way ahead of time, or at least managing brands' expectations is really important. Hoping that that they will have the trust for you to create what they're looking for, and to also give them options in the end. And I think that kind of plays into also chatbots from a video perspective. From if you could, I guess, what makes your life easier, Anna, as if someone's going out to a shoot to shoot a bunch of video for whatever reason. Let's say it's for a brand. Anything that you'd like them to keep in mind?
I think it's less about the length of the video, but more about what actually pops up. So when you convert a video or any visual asset into a data set, it's all about objects, colors, and you see them through, and then you can create recommendation platforms on top of it. I heard a bunch of people mention AI, machine learning. We need to have this data about a visual asset in order to serve something back to the person. And then pretty much the algorithm will start dictating on what would be served in the first place. So I don't know if we will see a lot of pretty girls and a lot of pink on the background. We will try to filter either for videos that have those assets or completely opposite so we can delight and surprise. So I guess, yes, lens is interesting and the platform is interesting, but the way when we start looking at the visual content, it would be more what are the objects and what are the interests of the people who are consuming them, and what should we give back from the database perspective?
Yeah, and I would actually say I think that's what makes creating assets for Snapchat the most difficult, but also kind of simpler. When you think of Snapchat, it's going to last 24 hours unless you're putting all your budget in and buying multiple days. And you think of how users are creating Snapchat content, it's very raw. I think that's like a really good word to describe how individual users' Snapchats are. So as a brand, you want to fit into that environment. You want to make sure the visuals are appealing. So an overproduced spot is going to look completely out of place in Snapchat when it's in between user stories or in between other publishers that are creating Snapchat assets that are also very raw. So it's just fitting into that environment visually so it's not so, oh, like what is this? And then people would just swipe right through.
And Michael, one thing you mentioned was how people should be creating for the environment. What I love about Snapchat is they actually get very involved in the process and they won't approve your creative unless they find it fitting for their environment. So if you do have a client that is very interested in kind of staying with the norm and thinking about, oh, I'll just take one of my TVCs and run it in this environment, Snapchat actually is a really great resource to help everybody kind of understand the best way to do that. And if you haven't played in that space, lean into them because they're there to help, and they provide a lot of value in terms of how you can have a successful campaign in that space.
What can you say about, let's say the brand wants more branding. How do you communicate to them that authenticity is key, that it just doesn't necessarily make a better experience if the brand's logo is 50% bigger?
So we're having those conversations right now. You probably are all over the place as well.
I think a lot of people in the room are.
Yeah, and to be quite honest, again, Snapchat's become a great partner of ours because they actually help you push back there. There are moments that branding will work in the environment if it's a brand that's appropriate. And there was actually one slide in the last presentation I took a picture of, and it was the one with the, I'm not going to remember all of it. At the top, it said the brand. In the middle, it had the swoosh, and then it had the apple. And it, Apple has the right to do advertising that's white and clear and crisp and ends in the apple, and everybody knows it's an Apple ad. And within Snapchat, that would be very welcome. If they did nothing but, put their brand forward, I think the millennial audience who is in that environment wouldn't probably respond as well. I think the way that Kylie Jenner has actually done some pretty amazing ads for some brands within Snapchat, and the brand was front and center in that example, and you can ask Snapchat for it. They share it in case studies. But because it was Kylie Jenner and the brand made the investment in her to be relatable to that audience, it actually worked. So I don't think there's one magic solution. When you're playing in these new environments, you have to be flexible. And if you are a brand marketer, or if you have a client that is pushing back and wants it to be kind of front and center our brand, talk to the publisher and let them show you case studies of what's working and what's not. And I think it will often change their mind.
Yeah, I would say too, you can probably still try finding that balance. I think the problem with branding is it ends up coming off very salesy. So if you can figure out a way to make it branded but still authentic and not saying buy this, use your product, I think there is a way to do that. one of my clients, Lane Bryant, has had a lot of really great video content, and they tend to just do everything. I'm not responsible for the creative, so I won't take credit, but the creative agency has done an amazing job in having a very similar feel to all the video assets. So even though it doesn't overtly say Lane Bryant, it doesn't have any specific product or logos or anything that really shows this is it. It still has that feeling, so when people see something, they'll still be like, oh, I think that was Lane Bryant, but it doesn't come off as overly pushy, but there's still that brand resonance. So if you do have a way of bringing your brand in and can own something visually, maybe you have some good comments about that, then you could still have a balance of both.
Yeah, I think we've looked from the data perspective. We've been doing it 3 years ago. We've used it manually. We've deployed mechanical Turkers who would literally watch videos and then classify big logo, small logo, no logo, yes logo. And now we can do it, as I mentioned, automatically. So when we take a look at it, it's so dependent on the season, on what's trending. If today millennials are watching a lot of other millennials playing video games, your ad should be looking like a game experience. This would work for somebody else. It won't work for other brands who maybe want to have their logos all over the place. So we really see it's going to depend on who is your target audience that you're going after and what the content that they find visually appealing. Some people like really cookie-cutter production. Some people like to look at very authentic videos of real people. So it's going to be dependent on context for production.
And brands tapping influencers to create content for them, I think also need to keep in mind that sometimes to maintain that authenticity so it doesn't look like someone is just shilling for the brand or for the product, that they have to have some free reign to kind of be themselves, to respond to fans in real time. Giving them sort of a carte blanche to respond as they would to someone asking them about anything. You also mentioned, chats. I think that's a pretty good integration as far as today's topics is, we're kind of talking about short form content and Snapchat, but also we're seeing the rise in live streaming and long form. I think you mentioned, I think you were alluding to Twitch. Of people who are willing to watch someone play classic Atari games for 6 hours on end, but more importantly, also having the ability to chat with other people while that's going on. So, is there other like chat integrations that you think brands should be keeping in mind as they're pursuing video content, or just anybody creating video content personally? Is this the type of thing if they want more people to see it? Should they, be thinking about how do I facilitate a good chat experience?
An example that I recently saw is, I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Celtra, but we work with Celtra and another company called PadSquad, which is mobile first. And we've actually seen they've created a new unit that is a chat box. And so they showed us an example from Toys R Us that was pretty awesome, because it was, you were able to interact with the ad unit and actually have a conversation with Jeffrey and ask questions. So in my mind, like, I'm a parent, I have a 5-year-old, I actually found that very relatable, because I was literally able to do a search for a toy, and then it asked, like Jeffrey, in this example, asked me questions. So I think that messaging, I think the whole chat box experience, whether it's on a site like LinkedIn who's talking about it or in an ad unit, is actually going to continue to become something that's much more popular. And to Anna's point, I mean, the way that you can use data to make it more relatable and more impactful is key.
So we actually built a chatbot internally for our company because we thought that it will be a cool thing to do. And then people started telling us, hey, can you serve PowerPoint presentations? And we're like, sure, we can serve PowerPoint presentations. Like, great. Can you search through images? Can you integrate into SQL databases? So people actually, the best part about the chatbots is that it's just the interface, but on the back of it, you can put so many powerful executions, search, optimization, recommendation systems, and it's really the limitation of what we find useful. So we can serve back people PowerPoint presentations right now if they want to say, hey, can you find a deck from my meeting 2 weeks ago that was presented by so-and-so, and we can literally search through the database and give it to them back.
And I think especially from looking at it from the retail angle, when you think of where industry can go in creating sort of those video chatbots, is when you think of styling. If someone needs advice on how something's going to look, they could say, I already own this product. Can you show me how it would look with this other product? So there's really interesting ways to visualize things, especially for any product that you need to see how it would all work together, which is why I think retail's really jumped on. Retail also has a challenge that they have to figure out the inventory and have their systems hooked into whatever chatbot they're doing. But I think there is a lot of potential there, and the whole idea of video bots is a really great place to start looking forward to.
And because it's humanly impossible, to your point, there's so much content produced right now. There's so many beauty bloggers. There's so many bloggers, period. It's humanly impossible to go and watch all those videos. So you want somebody to just give it to you right now, like right now. And you want to find something relevant, like now.
The level of detail that the data provides is just, I think, exponentially more. The way that you find, someone being conversational in the way that they want to see different videos, or how they interact with any type of content, whether it's a PowerPoint or whatever. It provides just so much more for people to look for under the hood. So I think how are we on time? Okay. Should we open it up for questions?
Any questions from the audience? I wonder if you could talk about the length. You mentioned tomorrow, especially that you did something that was like a couple minutes long. We're talking about 10 seconds. Any of you have any surprises that happened specifically where you did something short and said, "Oh, this is going to be a dud," and it turned out to be great, or something long said, "This is going to be great," and it wasn't, or either way? Any surprises that you did, and what details you can give about them?
So we create a lot of content for Revlon because if you've done a beauty brand or a fashion brand, you know that the more relatable that content is, the more the consumer tends to enjoy it. And beauty is all about inspiration. And so we've actually done a lot of work with Refinery 29, and we've done a lot of work with Hearst in actually cutting different video lengths. And I don't think there's a magic solution that says, oh, it should always be 10, it should always be 15. But we have found that the shorter, more creative the unit is, the more likely it is to be shared, and the more that we see it actually perform. Long form video tends to be better when you have a nice distribution plan behind it, because you have to use data to be much more in tune with your audience to make sure that it's getting viewed.
We've actually been going through the database for millennial moms, and we try to see what kind of videos they watch. And we thought, okay, it will be something short, like here's a 10-minute guide, 10 things you need to know how to raise your child. And then we were surprised to find an hour-long videos on YouTube. It's like hour, 2-hour huge video, and I'm like, whoa, they really have the patience to watch it. So it actually was extremely surprising that people would watch such long videos on YouTube. This is to the point of Lance.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. This has been a lot of fun.
Great, thank you. Thank you. Great job, Michael. We're going to now take a 10-minute coffee break, and we're going to get back and talk about aligning bots with brands in a presentation.